Hello and welcome to this lesson about solving absolute value equations. The learning target for this video is solving absolute value equations and determining solutions to absolute value equations. So absolute value refers to a number's distance from zero. So a number's distance from zero. So let's think about that. Let's draw a number line, and let's put a number 0 on it, and then let's put two numbers, a and negative a. A is the same number, all right, but what's different is the direction it is from 0. So what we have is two numbers that have the exact same distance, a units, whether it's inches, centimeters, feet, miles, who knows, it doesn't matter. But we have one that goes to the right, and we have one that goes to the left. And so what we have is two numbers, two values have the same absolute value. And so what this means for equations is that absolute value equations have two solutions. And again, you can think of it as a left solution and a right solution. You know, the one that's to the left, one that's to the right. So let me show you how we deal with the process of solving these. So let's go to an example. Let's say we have the absolute value equation x plus 4 is equal to 10. Now, the way we're going to do this is we're going to break it into two separate equations. So I'm going to actually write that off to the side because that's huge. Break into two separate equations. And this is key. Absolute value equations have a really tempting shortcut built into them, but if you do it, more often than not, you're going to be wrong. So our two equations are going to be this. First, we'll just take the equation as it is, but without the absolute value bars. Second, we end up taking the absolute value equation, but what we're going to do is change what's on the other side. We're going to make this negative. And so these form the basis of our two equations. Now, we just work with each one of these separately. So subtract 4 from both sides, subtract 4 from both sides. And we end up getting x is equal to 6, or x equals negative 14. And if you put either of these values in to our x right there, you're going to get 10. All right? So one is to the left, one is to the right. You don't need to state which one is which, but this is that goes back to like why there are two solutions, because we could go to the left or we could go to the right and find values that will give us, when we add 4, a distance of 10. All right, now this was the straightforward example. Let's kick it up a notch. So the next thing I want to get across is the idea of isolating the absolute value first. So let's say we have this example too. X minus 5 plus 8 is equal to 18. Okay? So right now, our absolute value is not isolated. So we have to isolate before we break into two equations. So isolate before making two equations. If we try to break it up into two separate equations, we're going to throw off the numbers just a little bit, and we don't want to do that. So what I'm going to do is subtract 8 from both sides, and then I'm going to have absolute value of x minus 5 is equal to 10. Now I can break this into two separate equations. X minus 5 is equal to 10. X minus 5 is equal to negative 10. Add 5 to both sides in both equations, so add 5, x would equal 15, or add 5 again, x would equal negative 5. Now the key here was to making sure that we isolated the absolute value. So we needed to get this all by itself. Let's continue to kick this up a notch and see what happens. So for our third example, let's say we have 2 times the absolute value of 3x minus 4 minus 9 is equal to 1. Okay, here we've got a lot going on. However, you can think of it pretty much the same as 2a minus 9 is equal to 1. 2a. All right. So what we can do is try to get a by itself. We need to get the absolute value by itself. And if this was just like a variable we were solving for, the process remains the same. We would work outside in. So we add 9 to both sides. We end up getting 2, the absolute value of 3x minus 4 is equal to 10. Oops. Let me erase that. Now divide both sides by 2. And here's where we have to avoid a mistake. Don't distribute into an absolute value bar. That absolute value bar, that's a barrier. That prevents anything from happening inside of it. So you truly need to isolate it. And you need to divide both sides by 2. And so now we have 3x minus 4, or the absolute value of that, is equal to 5. Now we break into 2 separate equations. And so we'll get 3x minus 4 is equal to 5. And then 3x minus 4 is equal to negative 5. Add 4. 3x equals 9. X equals 3. Or, add 4. 3x equals negative 1. X equals negative 1/3. And now, I want you to notice something. Take a good look at our answers. Notice that there is no real pattern to them. All right. Here we have 6 and negative 14, negative 15 and negative 5, and 3 and negative 1/3. The mistake that a lot of people would make is to solve the equation and get this, and then to say, well, it's got to be this, or x equals negative 3. But as you can see, we solved and we did not get that. So even though there are 2 numbers that are identical that have the same absolute value, you cannot just find one answer and then write the opposite of it. It doesn't work like that. You actually have to make 2 equations and solve for it. Finally, let's talk about the special cases. So we have to remember that absolute value is a distance. And what that means is it can't be negative. Absolute values make everything positive because a distance can only be positive. You cannot have a negative distance. You cannot be closer to something than like being next to it. It doesn't work like that. So you have to watch out for this. Let's say we have the absolute value of 5x minus 1 is equal to negative 8. The answer to this is no solution because this is a distance. This has to be greater than 0. Negative 8 is not greater than 0. So there is no solution that you could put, nothing we can put into x that's going to make this equal negative 8. Now, what you have to watch out for are ways this can be disguised. So for example, I could do this. Negative 2 times the absolute value of 5x minus 1 is equal to negative 8. This one does have a solution, or actually does have 2 solutions. Because when I divide by negative 2 on both sides, all of a sudden I'll have positive 4 over here. And so that's totally cool. So you have to be careful. It's not until the absolute value is isolated that you might have no solution. Okay? Because again, I could do something like, 3 or the absolute value of 3 times the absolute value of x plus 1 minus 4 is equal to negative 2. You're going to end up adding 4 to both sides. That's the first thing you're going to do. And now we have a positive absolute value, so 3, or it'll be equal to something positive. 3 times the absolute value of x plus 1 is equal to 2. And again, this is something that will have solutions. However, just for good measure, show you one more. Let's say we had 3 times the absolute value of x plus 1 plus 4 equals 2. Now right now you might look at it and be like, hey, this one has a solution. This is not a special case. Subtract 4 from both sides though. 3 times the absolute value of x plus 1 is equal to negative 2. You divide that by 3, and we have the absolute value of x plus 1, which again is a distance, is equal to negative 2/3. That is not possible. So we say no solution. So that's everything you need to know about solving absolute value equations in a nutshell. Good luck with your homework and practice, and let me know if you have any questions.